Thank you for tuning in to Talking Taboo. Today's discussion episode is Conversations with Fatherless Daughters. Today I have three beautiful ladies with me, and we're going to be discussing our experiences as it relates to growing up without a present father. Okay. Now, ladies, we're going to start off by each person just going around briefly sharing your experience as it relates to not having a present father within your life. And I'll start, and then we'll move to you, Sarah, and we'll go down to Grace and then Ebony. Okay. My situation was I was raised in a single parent home. I had a father who was not present. He abandoned me. However, I knew who he was. He actually stays in the state where a lot of my family lives. So I always knew who he was, but it just seems as if, for whatever reason, he didn't desire or, have a relationship with me. What was your situation, Sarah?
So I am from Sri Lanka, and I was born in Sri Lanka. And both my parents were college educated parents. Um, my I guess what happened to me was I lost my father after my parents got divorced. In the sense, my mom was extremely controlling to a point that she did not let my father come see me, or she didn't let me go to my dad. And so I've struggled actually being without a father, even though my father wanted to be with me and wanted to help out. I think with a divorce, everything just changed. And I think things became very personal between my mom and my dad after the divorce. It was almost like I was in between, and I was tormented from whatever the personal relationships they had. It seems like I was in the middle, and I actually didn't get to see my dad even when he was sick, or even when I had like competitions, or I had special events at school. My dad wasn't invited, or my dad wasn't aware. So I really had a really hard time growing up without a father who was willing to be there for me, but was not able to, because I lived with my mom and she didn't let me go see my dad.
Yeah, wow. Wow. What was your story, Grace?
So my story falls under the category of living in a home where both parents are there, but my dad was just emotionally absent and I guess mentally absent as well. He was into a lot of just like video games, PC games was his thing that he did. And so he never really paid a whole lot of attention to me or my older brother or my younger siblings. Just all of us kind of were just on the back burner. And my mom is a different story. She had her own issues that she was dealing with. Kind of turned into one of those attachment stories where my mom was a very anxious attachment type person and my dad was an avoidant type attachment person. And there's a whole bunch of theories about how those two types of attachments just kind of magnetize toward each other. And so that was the relationship dynamic that my parents had, that I ended up growing up with for my whole life.
Okay. Okay. And what about you, Ebony?
Okay, so my situation is a little similar to yours, Trista. I my dad, I don't know my dad. I've never known my dad. My dad and my mom, I guess, dated in my mom's younger years. She moved to Washington, D.C. with him, gave birth to me. somewhere in the midst of that relationship, I'm assuming things went wrong when I was still just a young child. And so she moved back to South Carolina with me. I have no memories of my dad, no recollections of my father. I know his name, and that is all that I know of him. I don't know if I have siblings by him. I don't know if I have grandparents, on his side, aunts and uncles. I don't know really anything about him. I don't know where his family is from or located or anything. So I pretty much spent my whole life in a single parent household, without my father present. When I was young, my mom, she was a single mother, battled cancer, lost her life to cancer when I was only 12 years old, and so then that left me without a mom or a dad. And so I then moved in with my aunt and her husband, and that was the first time in my life that I ever lived in a household where there was, two parents, kind of a cultural norm, especially in the African American family that, fathers are absent. And so never really saw an issue with it, never really had an issue with it as a child, because again, that's somewhat of a cultural norm for us. But wasn't until later in my adulthood that, I started to understand that not having a father affected me in a lot of ways. But again, I'm sure we'll get into that later in the discussion.
Okay. Okay. So as we see, there's a lot of differences here. And I think that makes for an interesting conversation, because I think it shows people that no matter the background, I think we all still share common similarities, and those basic needs that we all have as children and as adult women, they're all basically the same. Um, I'm going to start with you, Grace. I want to talk about, how do you all believe that this has affected you in your personal life, not having that father that you needed around? How did it affect you as it relates to your personal life, your identity, your self-esteem, your confidence? How did it affect you, Grace?
So for me, with having my dad still physically around, but just very absent emotionally, and I think the biggest impact it had on me was that I internalized his issue as there being something wrong with me instead. If he didn't want to be around me, if he told me to go away when I was trying to get his attention, then that meant that that I was unlovable, that there was something wrong with me that made him not want to be around me. And it made it really difficult to try to have any sort of love for myself when I felt like for some reason my dad didn't like me or even hated me, and I had no idea why.
Yeah, yeah. I know for myself, I feel as if I grew up lacking that confidence that I needed. My mother, she had her own trauma. So there was only so much that she could actually give me and instill and pour within me. So I think that it would have been nice to have that father that could instill just a little more confidence within me, because I found myself lacking a lot of confidence in areas. I would describe myself as being kind of shy growing up. And now I'm at a place to where I understood where that stemmed from. I believe it caused me to miss out on a lot of opportunities, for instance, that was necessary in me putting myself sort of out there. Like, for instance, I wanted to play different type of sports, and I always had the desire to want to do certain things, but I felt as if I was kind of like my worst enemy in a sense. And I feel as if I would have had that push. You see what I'm saying? From either parents, but particularly, from my father, I think that would have thrusted me into just higher heights, so to speak, because I've always had desires for greatness. But I feel like when you're a child like that, you need parents to pull it out of you, if that makes sense. So I could definitely see how, having a father to help me with my confidence would have been great. Mhm. What about you, Ebony?
Well, again, I go back to I never knew that not having a father was an issue in my life until later on in my adulthood. Um, as a child and as a teenager, I did a lot of things, and most of those things, a lot of bad things. If you will say, I was kind of a troubled child, and I kind of just chalked that up to losing my mom. At such a young age, because that was my support system. That was who I knew, and so when I lost her and things started getting crazy in my life, I just kind of equated it to not having my mom, not knowing that looking back now, a lot of the things that I did and experimented with was a direct impact of not having a father, of not having, growing up without a father. And I'm going to say this on this platform because you did ask us here to be open and honest, that it may help someone else. I've never said this out loud to anyone else besides my therapist, but as I got older and I started dealing with people, I never had trust. I still don't trust people, and trust is kind of something we build on from childhood. So sometimes if there's something missing from our childhood, we may not notice until adults. So now I understand a little bit more about why I don't trust. But I always said, and here's what I said, I never told anybody besides my therapist. I always had the mindset that when it comes to relationships and different things like that, if my own father who gave me life couldn't stay with me, be with me, love me, and protect me, then nobody else on this earth, especially a male figure, could do that for me, because it starts with my dad. And if he, created my life and didn't care enough about the life that he created, then no other man would care enough. And so that kind of played a lot in a lot of the decisions that I made growing up as a teenager, especially in the sense of, the opposite sex and things like that, confidentiality. Like I've always been confident in myself, I thought, but not knowing that, I was lacking confidentiality in areas that I couldn't see due to not having a father figure in my life.
Right. I understand that. Hmm. What about you, Sarah?
Um, well, my situation growing up, even though I had a father who was willing to be there for me, just the family situation made it impossible to see my dad. In fact, my mom and my dad lived about 3 minutes away from each other, and my school was just a walking distance. And my mom would literally control me and make me not go to my dad. So I think I felt deep inside so sad that, I would always question, why can't I see my dad? Why can't I go to my dad's house? Why can't I spend time with him? And even during competitions, like I did a lot of sports, I was very good with my studies and sports. He was not there for me. And I think growing up, I've realized that I have a need for attention, I think. And I believe that since I didn't have that from my dad, now I always feel like I want attention. Not that I think I want, but unfortunately, I've probably made wrong decisions about getting married myself, and expecting that kind of love and attention from my ex-husband, and I didn't get that. And I think that's a reflection of that fatherly love that I never got, and that attention that I didn't get, that I was seeking it from my ex-husband. Unfortunately, he had no idea of how to handle that need in me. Instead of giving me that attention, he just pushed me away from him. So I feel like since I didn't have parents together, and I didn't see that harmonious environment growing up, I didn't know probably how to handle my marriage. And even though I was very faithful to, you know, my family, I felt like the lack of attention and the lack of love that I didn't get from my dad growing up, it just carried on to my adulthood. And I honestly feel that sometimes I feel like I'm a failure, even though, you know, I'm educated and I'm from a good family and I'm, you know, financially stable, you name it, right? But deep down, I feel like, oh my God, what has happened to me? Is this because my dad wasn't there for me? Is this because I didn't get the love that I wanted? Is it because I didn't get the attention? You know, it gives me a lot of doubt in my life right now. I'm just being very open. I question myself, is it because I didn't have a good family growing up, uh, it, that I'm going through this right now? And am I creating that same situation to my child today? Am I doing the same mistake that um, I don't, you know, I obviously do not stop my child from seeing my dad, because in America we have law, right? We have rules, and you know, there's guidelines for, you know, joint custody and conservatorship and all that. But in Sri Lanka, it wasn't like that. It was like, oh, you can't go, you just can't see your dad, you can't go see him. Why? No, because I don't want you to. And there's no reason even, like, and my dad's a lawyer, he's very highly educated, and he's, you know, a good citizen, but still my mom would probably take that anger out on me and say, oh, you can't see your dad. So I think that at this age in my life, if I look back, I do feel that a lot of doubt in my life, even though I'm confident and I think I'm very outgoing and I'm friendly and everything, but there's a big hole deep inside my heart that I think that it runs back to growing up without a father. I really do feel that that is a huge impact in my life at this age in my life. Even though I probably didn't notice it when I was 15 or 20, I really do see it now in my life.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I know a lot of personal situations that are similar to yours, where the children are basically used as pawns in the middle of custody battles and, you know, breakups and things like that. And this is, it's a very common situation, very common.
Absolutely.
Mm, yeah. Um, and I know you touched on it a little bit already, Sarah, but I wanted to ask you ladies, how did you feel as if this upbringing affected your relationships with the opposite sex? I like to think that there's pretty much two types of insecure attachment styles that I think Ebony was hitting on a little bit. Or maybe it was you, Grace, but you know, like more the avoidant and the anxious type attachment styles. Now, for myself, again, I was a little shy growing up. So for myself, I believe I had more of an avoidant type attachment. I was never the type of woman that was like man crazy or boy crazy. I remember my first crush at 10 years old, and I carried that crush until 12th grade. Like, I just felt like I was I just felt like I was like that one man woman. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like like the promiscuous type, so to speak. I was more like avoided, if yeah, I should use that word. And I remember maybe until about 15 years old having this mindset of I didn't even want to get married, all men are trifling, because I was looking at it from the aspect of how I saw my father.
Mhm.
And somewhere in my early 20s, all of that just went away. And I found myself, wanting to get married and all of this. And, all men aren't the same. And I'm at a great place with that now, at the age of 37, because I'm able to understand things a little more now and understand that I can't allow one person to pretty much just ruin it for everyone, so I see things better now. However, it wasn't until I was, like to say, my late 20s, even though I wasn't the type to be, heavy, like in relationships or things like that, I still found myself connecting with people more on like friendship levels, even guys that I know weren't for me. You see what I'm saying? I think that could have been a little bit of what Sarah was saying, like wanting attention, so to speak, even though it wasn't the best type of attention, but you still found yourself kind of entertaining people that weren't for you. So I found myself doing a lot of that and just calling it friendships. You see what I'm saying? But what I will tell anybody is that that is still dangerous. Even though you may not, be having sex with people, but that emotional attachment can get you in a lot of trouble. Um, and that was kind of my situation. And I remember meeting this guy, and he was highly into me. And when I knew that, it broke me down, because here this guy is, he's interested in me. Again, I was like in my late 20s, he's interested in me, but I didn't know how to really handle that. I know he was a great guy, and I found myself just pretty much crying like, Lord, I know he's a great guy. What's wrong with me? You see what I'm saying? But in that moment is when I found the issue, so to speak. And I was able to look at myself and discover like what the problem was. And I remember sharing it with him, and he sort of already figured out what was going on with me. So he was very understanding. But that was the moment for me that I realized that I had those abandonment issues, so to speak. So yeah, but I will say that I'm grateful that I met him, because had I not met what I consider a good man, then I would have never been able to sort of deal with that within myself, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what about you, Ebony?
Oof. Men in relationships. I will say that as a woman with daddy issues, they are deeply rooted. As I explained to you guys, when I was younger, I didn't know, I didn't realize I had daddy issues. I didn't care that I didn't have a dad. A dad was never there, so what you don't have, you can't miss. When I was a child, anyway, I was in that mind frame. Well, a dad has never been here, so what? Who needs a dad? It wasn't until, like I said, promiscuity in my teenage years was because I was looking for. I'm guessing I was looking for what I didn't have in my dad in guys, and I've always been attracted to a certain type of guy. The good guys were never for me. The good guys felt like they're just not for me. I consider myself, well, I am very headstrong, and I feel like that's another issue with not having a father. And you become very headstrong as a woman because you feel like you have to protect yourself. I didn't have that father figure to protect me, to love me, to care for me. So I'm responsible for doing all of those things myself. So whenever I'm in a relationship with a man, I don't leave a lot of room for them to be the man. You get what I'm saying? I have to do what I have to do for me because that's how I've always been. And so I've always been more attracted to the bad guy type because I don't know. I guess it's like you say, abandonment. Abandonment. You're avoiding a certain type of guy because you never had that in a dad. And so the good guys were always like, man, not for me. The bad guys, give me the bad boy. I want the boy that's always in trouble. I want the boy that can't do anything right. Just immoral. Immoral. I can deal with that. I can't deal with the good guy. Because the good guy wants to be attached to me versus the bad guy, there's not so much that attachment, and I was afraid of attachment, not knowing that I was afraid of attachment, but looking back at it now, like I was afraid of attachment. I didn't want you to be attached to me. I never saw myself as a wife. I never even saw myself as a mother growing up. It was just like relationships, kind of like the relationships you will sometimes see on TV with the single ladies. I'm just jumping in a relationship just to have something to do for right now, but they lasted long. Like I would have long term. I've only really had 3 serious relationships in my life. They would last long term, but I was never really emotionally there. I wasn't emotionally attached to the man that I was being with, because I was my own man. So to say. And so, long story short, I did end up, I'm married. I have children. I have 2 children, and daddy issues has caused a lot of issues in marriage as well. In marriage, it's the whole submissive things. In a lot of cultures, they look at the husband is the head of the household. The wife should submit to the husband. I knew before I got married that would never happen. Never happened with me. And it's because of those attachment issues, those trust issues, I have to be responsible for me, because at the end of the day, like I said, no man is going to be able to truly and completely love me because my own father couldn't love me. And so instead of building emotional, solid relationships, I was there, just going with emotions. And so that has caused a lot of issues in my life and in my relationships. But again, it wasn't until I had an aha moment that I realized this is what's really going on with you. I mean, you're not scared to have a good man. You can have a good man. You're a good person. You're a good woman. You're a good mom. You can have a good man. You just have to let go of that fear of attaching yourself to a male figure. Like fully attaching yourself to a male figure. So it has caused a lot of issues in my life. I tried to do the married thing, because I have a daughter. And I don't want her to, because she has a dad that's active in her life, and she has a stepdad that's active in her life, and she's close to the both of them. And so I don't want my past situation to poison her. And so I try to work on that to give her a different perspective. Like, you can attach yourself to a man. You can be protected by a man. You can let your guard down and let a man be a man. But at the same time, I'm still fighting those issues within myself because no daddy.
Yeah. And I wanted to say something, because when you were saying, Ebony, how you felt like you were attracted to the bad guys, I remember the first guy, like, once I pretty much like finished high school, because again, I didn't really deal with people like that. I was very shy. Yeah. I remember the first guy that I sort of gave a chance to, he was kind of like a bad boy. He would like sell drugs and stuff like that. And I remember the first time we actually went out on a date, and when he came in to meet my mom, she automatically knew, like, like she just picked up this vibe, like, no. And when I got back that night, she chewed me out. She was like, leave him alone, look like he hustled. Like, she just read him. She read him. So for young people out there, when your parents give you a suggestion on somebody, they've been there, done that, so more than likely they can read you. But I know that we like testing the waters ourselves a lot of times. But I remember her pretty much knowing exactly what he was about, and she was correct. And I remember during that time, I met another guy. His mom, thought I was the perfect girl for him, so to speak. And I was like maybe 18, 19 at the time. And he was a great guy. Like, he was the guy, he would want to spend time with you on his days off. Like, he was the great guy. But again, like you said, that wasn't what I was used to. But what I can say is that I'm grateful that I met this guy, because I believe he introduced me to my worth. I remember him telling me, "You're a great girl." Like, I never really had anybody to say these things to me, at that age. And I remember him telling me to never limit your options. If I don't remember anything else that he said, I remember that. And that just stuck with me. And I realized that I was settling for less than what I deserved. But it took someone to come into my life and tell me that. So I like to look for lessons in, situations and people that I meet, because I feel like you could always get some type of lesson out of it. So I just want to share that. But I can say that, after meeting him, he was a huge impact on my life. And I think he helped me for the better, if that makes sense. Um, so what about you, Grace?
So for me, well, I got lots of stories about the whole, like, going through boys like they're the next hot thing. And the specifically during, like, high school, I met this boy who I, like, super fell for. And honestly, looking back at the whole situation, I'm like, why
Yeah.
why the heck was I even into him in the first place? But I think it was a lot of that, looking for that attention and that validation from a male figure, especially just considering that for years before that, like when I first started middle school, I noticed that I got really attached to teachers, which, like, for a long time I was like, there's something seriously wrong with me. I must, like, I feel like I must have a crush on my teacher, and that's weird. But like, looking back on it now, it's like, no, I didn't actually have a crush on my teacher. I just really liked having that validation and feeling like someone actually cared. So then in high school, I met, this boy, and I dated him for almost 2 years. And kind of going on that note that you mentioned, Trista, about how your mom just kind of read the situation and was like, heck no, when I finally broke up with my high school boyfriend, which at the time then I was about 18, I remember my dad came in and sat on the end of my bed as I'm curled up and just sobbing because I was so distraught over this relationship ending. And all he did was just, like, pat my ankle, and he was like, well, I knew right from the start that he wasn't the one for you. And I was like, it's like, you couldn't have told me that like 2 years ago? Thanks a lot, Dad. Like, frick, heck you. So then for a long time after that, still, I went back and forth with all of these different men who I was just looking for attention from. And again, like, wanting to be, like, open and honest, it landed me in a really scary situation where there was a guy that I met that I was taking martial art lessons from, and he was just over twice my age, and he basically, like, got to a point where I really trusted him, and he knew about my issues with my dad, and he said that, if I could kind of lean on him as, like, a father figure type thing, and then used that weakness that I had for wanting a father figure as a way to sexually exploit me, which was really awful. And I actually kind of credit my husband for helping me to get out of that situation, because otherwise it would have carried on further and would have gotten really, really bad if not. So, so yeah, that's kind of how it's impacted me relationship wise. So, but my marriage right now is good. We haven't had any kids yet. And I have kind of not exactly put my foot down ish, because we've got our own issues. So I kind of said, we're going to go to marriage counseling or marriage therapy, whatever, and work this shiz out before we have kids. Otherwise, it's not happening.
And that's good. And I love that you have that mindset of, trying to deal with it and, break those cycles or whatever you need to do within self. Because I personally think once you have children, it's like the trauma within you, it magnifies itself. And I like to think that because I look at it like having children, that's one of the most personal and intimate relationships because they're a part of who you are. And our trauma tends to magnify itself or show up, shall I say, in relationships. So it's really not until we're in relationships that you can see your issues, you know. So I think that's great. So I commend you for doing that and having that, mind space to do that. That's really good, Grace. Now, Sarah, I know you shared a little bit already, but would you like to talk a little more about how?
Yes. So I was born in Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka, most schools are either girls' schools or boys' schools. So we cannot date boys because we don't get to see them. Well, some girls do, but it's very difficult. And I lived like a minute away from the school. So after school's done, I walk home. Obviously, can't see any guys. So I've never had a boyfriend growing up, up to college. But of course, I like boys, but there wasn't an opportunity because we really didn't get to see much. But in college, I had a few relationships which were not very successful, let's put it that way. But I think based on my parents' divorce, I never wanted to get married. I didn't want to have children because I think I was really tormented by how how unhappy I was growing up as a child because my parents are both highly educated. I am from a, upper middle class family. I had money. I had a driver. I had a, maid to help me with my, cooking and stuff and food and everything. So, but my mom was never there. My dad was never there. My mom traveled around the world and she's she studied at Cornell and she got scholarships. She has a PhD, and she was a workaholic. She gave me money. Hey, here's the money. Here's the driver. Here's the car. You just learn on your own. Here, go for classes if you need to, and that kind of situation. That's what I had. But you can't see your dad. But my dad worked in Sri Lanka and he's successful and he remarried and she's wonderful. We're very close and he had another daughter, but they seem like a happy family, but I cannot go there because my mom was too angry with this whole divorce. And if I can say something to whoever is watching this, please don't let your children suffer because you hate your ex-husband or you hate your ex-wife. That's not fair for this children. That is not fair. And I myself, I'm going through this right now. I mean, I'm actually very sad deep down because I'm struggling with my own issues of parenting with the ex-husband. And I feel like I'm a failure in life because looking back at how I didn't have a dad and how I didn't have a family growing up, even though they're both highly successful individuals and extremely intelligent and both from good families. What happened to me? I mean, what happened to me growing up? I mean, I didn't have my dad. I didn't have siblings. I have a stepsister, a stepbrother, and a half sister whom I never grew up with. I grew up on my own. Didn't get to see my father, even though he was loving, and he wanted to give me money and care for me. I remember one time, I'm very athletic. Trisha, like how friendly I am and how outgoing I am from the little time we spent together in Colorado. I remember one time I won a district championship, and I was awarded with the championship from the president of the country. My dad was not there. My mom was not there. I still, at my age, I still remember that pain. It's like, what did I do to not to have my dad near me? What did I do? It's not my fault, right? And now I think I met my ex-husband um, through a proposal. So I'm just trying to throw some culture, our culture into this conversation. I actually met him and got married in 13 days, which I think is pretty bizarre, right? You don't know someone and just make a decision. I don't know if it was a wrong decision, but I think I really thought that he was the one, and I wanted that attention, that love, and that caring, and I felt like this person would give it to me. I've always run after love. I've always wanted that. Oh, I want someone, I want that person to love me and give me attention and care for me. I'm very confident, but at the same time, I'm very vulnerable to love. I feel like even though I did all the steps right, I think I failed in love. I failed in that attachment. I failed in that that security I'm looking for. And I feel like a big part of me not feeling confident with love or with a family, with a husband, is because I probably didn't get that from my dad. I feel lost, honestly. And sometimes I sit and wonder, what did I do wrong? And I know I loved my ex-husband so much, and maybe I still do. And it's like hard for me to get my mind off of him, especially when I see how my child is suffering right now. um, I just think that, and I try a lot to try to communicate, but it's not working. And I feel like my son is probably having the same problem that I had growing up, that I just didn't get to see my dad because my mom was just too angry and she couldn't forgive. And even though I didn't have many men in my life, like for the last 15 years, I just truly loved my ex-husband and wanted that loss that I lost from my dad, and I didn't get that either. So I don't know, I don't know at this point in my life. I hope I will find someone who could. It's almost like I'm trying to replace that loss from a man that I don't think I can ever find. I think unlike Ebony, I trust people very fast. Like I'm very vulnerable, I'm very loving, but I think that it's just too much. Maybe it's just I want that too much, that I think that people are so resistant, or people are scared to be vulnerable. I think people are scared to open up, especially in America. I think people are very like guarded, and I feel like I'm one of those. out of the ordinary, who's just doesn't have any guards, who's so willing to like open up and willing to receive that love. But I just feel like i'm I'm not getting that love that I lost from my dad. And I feel like maybe I don't know what I should do to be more tough, I think, and be more closed, because I'm just so open that I'm just still looking for that attention and that love that I lost in my life. And it's incredible how much that I feel that loss that I um, that loss that happened as a child, how much it is affecting me now today.
Yeah. It's that childhood trauma. It's crucial that we understand that. So many people, they don't believe it's affected them. Like I remember this one lady at my job when I was on a travel assignment, and we were talking about it, like, just amongst the groups. And I'm the type of person, I believe in getting to the root cause of issues. If we're having an issue or behavior, let's address the root cause. There's something deeper going on behind every, behavior in a sense. And I remember this lady yelled out, well, we can't blame our parents. We can't blame everything on our child. We just can't. But this same lady is married to a man who cheats on her repetitively. You see what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's the now for a lot of people, and I think that's what it is. We're just not ready to go there, so to speak, because it's pain involved in that. And we live in a society where we bypass everything. Oh, I'm over it. I forgave. I did this. I did that. No, you didn't. Like, healing is a process. You just don't get over something by saying, oh, I forgave. Like, we live in a society, a microwave society, y'all. We don't want to deal with no pain. People barely even want to express their feelings and their emotions. Like you say, people don't want to be vulnerable. So healing is a process. And I think so many people are avoiding doing that work. We don't want to have to go back to the beginning. And unfortunately, we have to look at our beginning. I mean, you can understand your parents' situation and do all of that, but at the end of the day, you have to validate your experiences without excuses. Yes, they may have had their trauma, but at the end of the day, your feelings and your needs were not met. And as parents, it's our responsibility to meet the needs of our children. So it's really not even about how the parents feel or making them comfortable. It's about you being able to express yourself, validate your experiences, and speak your truth. So I personally believe, and Ebony, I know you're going to school for psychology, right? I personally believe at the root of everything, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, I just think what our world is missing at the core of all of that, I think so many people are dealing with emotional neglect. That's what I believe it is. When I think of emotional neglect, I think of children not being heard, seen, and understood. That's what we all need. Validation. That's validation. That's love. That's acceptance to a child. And what I personally think is that that's the cycle that's repeating itself. It really has nothing to do with giving your children money. It has nothing to do with all of this fancy stuff. Children need attention. Children need validation. And I think until we as a society can understand that, we're going to continue the cycle of children growing up without love, feeling as if they have no connection with their parents, because I hear that a lot from children. You can be in the house with your parents 18 years and have no connection with them. And I think that accounts for a lot of the loneliness that we see. I mean, and just keep it real. Social media scrolling all day, that's in search of connection. I mean, whether we want to believe it or not, but a lot of people are looking for a connection. So I like to think emotional neglect, whether your parents, they may have provided for you physically, but if they didn't have emotional intelligence, if they didn't work on their own trauma and issues, you're still going to be neglected emotionally because it's what you did not get. It's what they did not give you. You see, that's what children need. And if we could understand that, I think that we can raise, more successful children. But I think that's the cycle we need to break. Emotional neglect equals rejection to a child. So I like to think, and I'm Christian, so I like to think that it's a spirit of rejection that's operating in people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we have to break. We have to break the cycle of rejection. We have to break the cycle of emotional neglect. And again, parents, I believe, or somebody's going to have to stop the cycle by saying, you know what, I'm going to go to counseling, therapy, and I'm going to start working on myself and deal with these things. I'm going to start building that emotional intelligence that I need to be able to, first deal with myself and then be able to give that to my children. But that's all children need, to be seen, heard, and understood. They just need you to show interest in them. And to them, that's love. It's not about the money. It's not about none of that stuff. That's what children need. And again, I think I looked at that from my own experience. And not only that, but I have like a lot of nieces and nephews and people that would always come to me. And I'm like, why did everybody always come to me? And even like my mom relied heavily on me for like that emotional, I guess, connection. Her mom died when she was young. So I always wonder, why is everybody kind of clingy to me? But then I realized that I think that I possess that like empathy and that level of, I guess you'd say, emotional maturity that maybe their parents or people surrounding them did not have. And I'm a highly empathetic person, and I think I was just born that way. You know what I mean? So I see now that that's the problem. People don't have the capacity to connect emotionally with people and their children. So that's what I think we're missing. And I mentioned you, Ebony. What do you think about that? Like, just in your studies and things that you're working on within yourself, do you see like a correlation with that?
Well, of course, that kind of brings you back to more of a person-centered therapy. Being from an African American culture, of course, a lot of African American people don't believe in therapy. They don't believe in counseling. They believe in go to church, read your Bible, pray, and everything will be healed. That's it. Me, I've always been in tune with counseling. I've always attended counseling. I put my children in counseling because it's very therapeutic, because a lot of issues that we go through in adulthood, they're not new. I don't think ever in our lifetime we go through new trauma. Every trauma in our life stems from that child within us, that childhood trauma that was never addressed, that we never got past. Nobody ever shut down for us, and so it just stems and stems and stems into adulthood. And if you look at a lot of your adulthood traumas, like I said, I believe you rarely face new trauma. Everything stems from somewhere. Something has happened in your life at some stage of development to where you just didn't successfully get through that stage of development. And now as an adult, you have your own family, you have your life, your job, everything else. And now you can kind of see to where those things that weren't dealt with in childhood has followed you into your adulthood. So kind of like when you watch TV shows and you see people going through things on a television show, it always brings that adult character back to that child character. It's because of that child is still stuck in there. Of course, you've aged, you've grown up, but mentally that child is still stuck at some stage back in their life where they didn't get what they needed from a parent or whatever, and they're suffering trying to get through that. And so while I am spiritual, I do believe in God. God has done amazing things for me. I also believe in science, and I believe in therapy, and I believe that, there are some issues that I'm not going to say you can't take to God, but God and God alone will not fix for you. And so that's why a lot of people grow up stuck in constant turmoil in their adult life. And it's not, this happened last week, and so now I'm dealing with this. No, you've been dealing with that all your life, and you just haven't been able to have it addressed for you. So I hope that helped a little bit. That's just my take from it.
Is there anything you, Grace and Sir, want to add to that? Or,
I have I guess my own couple cents to add in there. I have run into a lot of the same sort of, I guess, cultural dilemma. So I belong to the LDS church, and the LDS church is very much the same way. It's like, oh, God will just take care of it. You just need to rely on Him. You need to just make sure that you pray and read your Bible, read your scriptures, and and He'll take care of it all for you. And but it's funny because one of the we call them general authorities of the church actually made a statement about how the way that he views it, God looks on emotional wounds no different than He looks on at physical wounds. Like, you wouldn't go to God and expect Him to just pray and magically heal your broken femur. He would expect you to go to a doctor and potentially have surgery or whatever you needed to do to make it better. And so in the same sense, with those emotional issues that we have, sometimes we do need that help, and we need to put in our own effort in order to fix those things. So, and that's something that I've run into unfortunately a lot, where people who are well-meaning, but they're like, oh, you just need to pray, and you just need to, are you sure you're really, living and making sure that you're good with God and that you're good with Jesus and whatnot? And it's like, it's not helpful. Thanks, but no.
right. And I think a lot of that is what I like to call, but first of all, I believe that a lot of people that feel that they're misguided themselves. They're misguided themselves, and it's what I call toxic conditioning. We're just doing kind of what we're told, but I don't think the average person never really stops and question things for themselves. We've been blindly following rules since we were children. The average person do not think for themselves. I think we're just on autopilot. And I think that's where a lot of that toxic positivity that people tell us, like you say, they don't mean harm, but they actually think that they're helping us when they tell us stuff like that without really thinking about what they're saying. And it just shows that we're just in just a cycle of toxic conditioning, and we don't question anything. We don't question it because it doesn't make sense if you think about it. I mean, but we never think about it. It's
Yeah, we are initially who we think people want us to be, not
that's
who
right.
we want to be ourselves.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're right. Anything you'd like to add on to that, Sarah, before we move on?
No, I think it's just I still question myself about the lack of love that I didn't get from my dad, and that how much I wanted it from my ex-husband. And I think we just struggled for 14 years because I think he just didn't understand me and my needs. All I wanted was that attention and love. But he would always say, why do you need so much attention? I can't give you this attention. Why do you always want to be the center of attention? I don't understand. So I think like he just absolutely didn't understand. And I probably didn't find the right person for me who could probably replace that love that I missed from my dad. I think that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the love and attention that I didn't ever get from my dad, because I'm so much like my father. And I think I expected someone in my life to be very understanding and loving and just do little things for me and make me feel important. I think they make me feel loved. And I didn't find that as a child, and I didn't find that getting married. So I honestly feel like mm, maybe it's just probably my bad luck, or maybe I expect too much, or maybe I didn't don't know how to adapt, maybe from, even though like logically I know a lot of things, logically I know, okay, I need to not expect too much from anyone, or be able to be independent, and not crave for that love that I missed. uh, Logically, even though I know all of that, I think that emotionally I'm just like still going after that attention and love and care that I didn't get from my father. I mean, even at my wedding, because Sri Lankan weddings are like a big deal. I remember my mother fighting with my dad even during my wedding, and I was thinking, what is this? Like, here I am on my wedding day, and you guys are fighting over pretty much everything, and that's supposed to be one of the happiest days in my life, right? So I just felt like my mom just did not understand uh, the position of a dad in a child's life. And I think for those who are watching this, it is really important. Like, you may be the most richest or the most important person or the most financially stable person, but that child needs that dad as well. That child needs that dad. You may hate him because of your personal reasons, but it is not fair for a mother to take away that love and attention, take away the father from that child's life, especially if the father is willing to be there for you, right? If the father is there, if the father is wants to be a part of you, if the father wants to take care, if the father wants to spend on you, what right does a mother have to take that away? And I don't think even to this date that my mother will accept that, oh, I did something wrong for you, I did something wrong to you growing up, oh, I took your dad away from you, that is wrong. My mom, still, she's very stubborn. She'll never admit that the trauma that she did back 30 years ago, what she did to me, still lingers in my life. And I feel like uh, I myself today, I wasn't successful in my marriage, and I don't know whether my parents' divorce and me growing up without a father attributed to the fact that didn't know how to deal with a husband. Maybe I didn't know to expect less from my husband, because I was very faithful throughout my marriage. I did everything I can think of that would have made a successful marriage, but we were very unhappy. And I think that maybe I wanted so much love and attention that I never got.
Yeah. 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 All right, ladies, now I'm going to wrap it up. And I just have one final question for you all. I know that it's an unfortunate situation because I do believe that in order for a child to grow and be able to grow into the adult that they need to be, it's beneficial for them to have two loving parents around them. And even though it may not really be anything that we can pull positive from the situation, do you ever feel as if there is something that was helpful in a sense that you gained from just the whole experience, or something positive, or shall I say helpful, that you can see in this situation that has benefited your life in any way? Like, for instance, in my case, I consider myself to be a cycle breaker in my family. And I believe that it helped me to see and understand the type of person that is not for me. You know what I mean? Um, I'm able to look at the things that I didn't get from my father, and the things that I didn't get, either from my mother. And I know firsthand what a child needs to, feel love and be loved. So I'm at the point of working and healing myself so that I can give my children to come a better future. Because again, since I've experienced the lack, I now understand firsthand what I need in order to be a good mother and to give my children. Um, do you, any of y'all want to say anything about that? Do you feel like it's anything that you pull from your situation that could benefit you?
Okay, so I'll go first. Um, Kind of like you, Trista, I wish that I could have taken that bad experience of an absent father and applied it to the type of man that I knew I didn't want. But unfortunately, I feel like I've spent my whole life chasing my father. Like everybody I've dated has been my father. And so it's not until recently, very recently, that I'm beginning to learn um, the effects of him not being there and what I no longer want. And so never too late, although I wish it had started in my teenage years of, okay, run away from this. It didn't. But again, you live, you learn, you grow. What I can take away positively from my father not being in my life as a parent and as a mother is my kids always come first. I don't care what I have going on. Family is everything to me, especially my children. I can't be everywhere all the time for everything, but you best believe 95% of the time I'm there. And Trista, you know, I live a busy life. I'm military. I've had some health issues, you know that as well. So I've battled cancer twice, and there's just been I have a lot going on, school, military, everything. But at the end of the day, my kids trump everything. They trump everything, and I think I pull that from the instinct of, like you say, kids need love, time, and attention. Of course, I can throw money at my kids all day long and not be involved with them, and they will probably be fine with that right now as children. But as adults, they'll look back and be like, well, you know what? Mom wasn't at that basketball game. Mom didn't come to see me cheer. Mom wasn't at this tournament. You know, this was like Sarah was saying, she had that great event where she was getting awarded something by the president and her parents weren't there. I don't ever want my kids to look back and say, well, dang, I had this was one of the biggest things, biggest moments to me in my life, and my mom just was not there. You know, she just wasn't. And so I don't ever want my kids to see me in that light. And so not having a dad has taught me to be a much better mom and to truly value time with my kids and memories with my kids and things of that sort. And it just, you know, of course I have bills, I have life, I have a lot of things going on. But at the end of the day, like I said, ultimately my kids don't lay their head down at night without knowing mom put in everything that she could to be there for me. And that, you know, that, because that means a lot to me, because I wish I had that in my mom before a shorter period of time, because like I said, she passed away when I was 12. And so I didn't have that in a dad. I didn't have a dad to pick up that slack. And so that means a lot to me. Just being there for my kids, time, building memories, means everything in the world to me. And so I can attribute that to the absent father.
All right. What about you, Sarah? Anything?
Yes, I think I sometimes think that I'm still learning and I'm still making mistakes, and I feel like the one thing I shouldn't have done, um, seeing my parents divorce and how it affected me growing up without a dad. I feel like I pretty much did the same thing to my child, and I just really, part of me, I really regret that. And but the problem is, I think, Ebony, as you told, Sri Lankans don't believe in therapy, counseling, marriage counseling, and especially, you know, men in our culture are very headstrong and dominant and likes to put down women. And even though I feel like I'm an equal to my ex-husband, I felt like I was always the inferior. I was always the less important person, even though I cooked, cleaned, taught the kid, did a full-time job, and brought money and entertained the guests and entertained his in-laws and, his parents and everything. I felt like I did so much in that family. I never, wasted money. I just tried the best I can, but still I feel like I failed today, and um, um, I'm I'm I failed to give my child the life that I lost, and at least I feel like I am a better mom than my mom, because I never ever try to stop that bond between my son and his dad, because I know what I went through as a child, losing that bond and that relationship, only because my mom was trying to get back at my dad through me. And so I try so hard to not let my child go through that suffering that I went through as a child. Um, uh, and hopefully things will get better over the years. And um, I see that growing up, all that effort that my mom did to take me away from my dad uh, was fruitless, because today I'm so close to my dad, and he's my best friend, and I talk to him every single day. Even though he's in Sri Lanka, we WhatsApp every day. And I think that if a parent tries to intentionally or unintentionally take away that bond between the child and a parent, I think it backfires, because I barely ever talk to my mom. I have a lot of animosity, even though I try to forgive her. It's just very hard. I hardly ever call her, and I just feel like um, it really backfires if you try to take a parent away uh, from a child. It really will backfire on you. And I think that, whoever's watching, I hope that my personal experience in my life, especially, I'm from a different culture, but I'm American, I've lived here long enough. But no matter what culture we are from, uh, divorce happens. And this is, I can understand if my father wasn't alive, but this is a father I had who was willing to support, willing to help me, willing to be there. Even important decisions in my life, my mom just made it without even talking to him. Even my marriage, it was a proposal, and my mom didn't want to talk to my dad regarding anything in my life. She just decided, no, uh, he's not relevant. He's not important. I make decisions. I'm the one. And I think that that affected my life tremendously. I wish my mom would have been cordial with my dad to make decisions about me growing up. Uh, and today, I hope that I could make decisions with my ex um, in a sensible way. But with this COVID, it has become a big problem that just like Ebony said, I could go work as a travel nurse. Trisha, I'm sure I could have stayed in California, and I am doing what I'm doing now as a teacher because I know if I take some other job, I wouldn't get to see my child as much as I would, doing the job right now, what I'm doing right now. And I don't want to ever see my child say that, oh, my mom was never there. Just like Ebony, my son is my life, he's my priority. And I'm trying hard to be cordial with my ex and do a job where I could be there for my son and support him and and at least see him till he goes to college, and then of course they're on their own, but I'll always be there for him. But it's it's interesting how we try to adapt with all the things that we go through in our lives, and when we have children, how we sacrifice our our jobs, our pretty much everything to make their lives better. um, uh, I think in my personal situation, a lot of people in America, at least 56% of people are divorced. Hopefully these parents can work together for their child, instead of being I'm the boss or I rule everything, or you know that parent is not important. That's not the way it should be. Both parents should be involved and take care of the children as much as they can.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so sad, especially when you see, um, and I know you all probably see it on Facebook all day, when you have fathers who's posting posts about only bitter mothers put their father on child support, only like they want to get out of taking care of their children. That breaks my heart. That breaks my heart. So just imagine if there's two immature parents, a mother and a father. Just imagine what that child is going through. It is just heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. It's just that lack of emotional intelligence and immaturity that it's just so heartbreaking, y'all. Okay. Well, Grace, I'm going to end it with you. Um, again, I know it's an unfortunate situation, but is there anything you would say that was beneficial as a learning experience from this situation? Something that you can take?
Um, well, in some cases, in some senses, I would say that I got really lucky, I guess. Um, my my best friend's dad, all growing up, and this is a girl that I've been friends with for, oh, let's see, 21 years now. And her dad, for our entire childhood, was just really attentive to his four daughters. That was all he had, was four girls. And it was so different from the way that my dad was. And so I kind of got a picture at a really early age that something was wrong with my family. I couldn't put my finger on it because I was only like, 7, 8 years old. And then even growing up to 18, 19 years old was still not quite able to be like, what is this? Something's not right. Um, but I continued, even like after I moved away from home, seeing different families that were a lot more healthily functional than mine. And it taught me a lot about what I wanted my own family to look like. And in a lot of ways, I also got very protective of my younger siblings, especially because the next kid after me is 6 years younger than me, and then the next is 8 years younger than me, and then the next is 16 years younger than me, and then the next is 21 years younger than me. Like, big, huge spread of kids. And about 5 years ago, my family moved across the country. And when they moved, I decided to go with them because I didn't really have anything going for me at that point. I was about 21 years old. And I saw, it was the first time I had been home in about a year and a half. And I saw a lot of similarities between the next two younger kids who were, oh boy, 14 and 16, I think is how old they were at the time. But I saw a lot of similarities between them and myself when I was their age. And it made me really angry because I was basically just saying, okay, maybe you screwed up with my older brother and me, but you have had so much time to figure out your crap. So you need to get it together because you've got 4 more kids that you've got to raise, and hopefully help them to be healthier than me and my brother are. So at one point, I only stayed with my parents out in their new house for about 4 months almost. And towards the end of that time, when I was going to come back to live with my grandma and try to kind of get on my own 2 feet, I had a sit-down conversation with first my dad by himself, where I basically told him that for my whole upbringing, I basically had no father. I told him that I felt like we were roommates rather than he was my dad, and that he needed to get his act together because he had 2 other daughters that he needed to take care of, and he had 2 sons that also needed their dad. And if he couldn't be there for me, the best way that he could make it up to me was by paying it forward and helping the younger kids turn out better than I did. And then I had a similar conversation with both him and my mom on the same subject. And so it, like, for me, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's just given me a voice to be confident and still nervous, but not completely afraid of facing those difficult conversations where I feel like something is wrong. And it's helped in a lot of situations, not just in my own personal relationships, but in work, in everything that I've done, because I've gotten a lot more confident in saying something's not right here and something needs to change, and we're going to talk about it.
That's good. That's good. Well, I want to say I thank all of you ladies for participating in this conversation. It really means a lot to me, and I'm sure that there's somebody out there watching that can relate to something that was said today. So I really thank you all for that. And for those of you who are watching, I thank you so much for tuning in today for our Conversations with Fatherless Daughters episode on Talking Taboo. And remember to catch us every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time.